Let's rewind to a time when SriLankan Airlines was more than just an airline, it was a flying symbol of national achievement. But what changed? Why did this flagship carrier spiral into crisis? Well, a perfect storm hit. Years of mismanagement, think poor route choices, and opaque contracts left the company exposed. Then came the pandemic, slashing demand and grounding planes worldwide. Imagine running a business where your main product seats in the sky suddenly has 0 customers. Add to this the technical burden of aircraft leases, long-term rental agreements that became financial anchors, not lifelines. You might be wondering, couldn't they just shrink operations? If only it were that simple. Fixed costs and global fuel price spikes meant losses piled up, fast. This setup led directly to years of red ink and mounting public frustration. So, was it just bad luck or deeper structural flaws? Let me give you a peek behind the curtain. The airline's debt ballooned past LKR 71 billion by 2022-23. That's not just a number, it's a warning sign that the entire business model was under threat. If you've ever tried to fix a leaky boat while still sailing, you know it's not easy. SriLankan had to keep flying, even as financial holes multiplied. And when the industry lost thousands of skilled staff and struggled with supply chain bottlenecks, SriLankan's already thin roster was stretched to breaking point. So, how did all this turbulence affect the airline's reputation and operations? The answer? Trust eroded. Both passengers and partners grew wary. But here's the conflict. Sri Lanka needs its national airline to connect with the world, especially for tourism. The good news? In every crisis lies the seed of recovery. Let's taxi forward to see how SriLankan Airlines began its climb out of the storm. Now, you might be asking, did things actually get better? Let's talk numbers. In the 2023-24 fiscal year, SriLankan Airlines pulled off something few thought possible, a net profit of LKR 3.9 billion. That's a hard pivot from the prior year's LKR 71 billion loss. But what drove this turnaround? 2 big aviation terms, load factor and operating profit. The load factor, simply put, the percentage of seats filled jumped to a solid 79%. Imagine a restaurant filling almost every table every night. That's efficiency. But there's more. Revenue soared to LKR 333.6 billion, and the airline posted an operating profit of LKR 33.9 billion before accounting for wildcards like exchange rates and emergency repairs. It's not magic. It's discipline, cutting unnecessary costs, ramping up digital check-ins, and smart marketing to bring back both tourists and Sri Lankans abroad. You might wonder, was it all smooth sailing? Not quite. Cargo revenue actually dropped 39% to LKR 31 billion as global shipping normalized and prices fell. But, and here's the resolution, it's still higher than pre-pandemic levels, which shows resilience. Let me ask you, when was the last time a government stepped in to settle a company's fuel bill? That's what happened here. The government paid off LKR 102.5 billion in fuel debt and injected LKR 5 billion in fresh capital. Think of it as giving the crew a life raft after a shipwreck. So, is SriLankan Airlines out of trouble? Not entirely. But these numbers prove a disciplined course correction is possible, even after years in the red. Have you noticed smoother check-ins at Bandaranaike Airport lately? That's no accident. SriLankan Airlines has been investing in digital infrastructure, upgraded reservation systems, and self-check-in kiosks. Here's a technical term for you: automation. By letting machines handle repetitive tasks, staff can focus on what matters most: customer care. Now, you might be thinking, does technology really fix service problems? Imagine you're a tourist rushing to a gate. Fast, reliable check-in can make or break your experience. Sri Lankan's tech upgrades have cut wait times, and improved accuracy-less manual entry means fewer mistakes. But there's another angle: digital marketing. The airline ramped up social media campaigns targeting both overseas Sri Lankans and first-time visitors. The result? higher bookings, and a stronger brand presence in markets like India and the Middle East. Here's a quick story. A friend of mine booked a last-minute ticket online, breezed through self-check-in, and even got real-time flight updates on her phone. That's the power of a modernized airline experience. The lesson? Investing in technology isn't just about gadgets. It's a strategic move to win back customers, boost efficiency, and compete with global giants. Let's be real, no recovery story is without its setbacks. SriLankan Airlines faces three big headwinds: a shrinking fleet, staff shortages, and global risk perception. The technical term here is asset utilization, how well you use what you have. After COVID, the fleet dropped from 27 to 21 aircraft. That's like playing a football match with fewer players on the field. Now, you might ask, why not just rent more planes? Here's where lesser risk profile comes in. Aircraft leasing companies view Sri Lanka as high risk, thanks to past defaults and economic instability. This makes leases expensive or simply unavailable. There's also the human factor. Over 0 flights were canceled last year, costing more than USD 60 million because of delayed maintenance and a shortage of trained engineers. If you've ever waited hours for a delayed flight, you know how this stings both passengers and profits. Let me ask, what keeps an airline running? Planes and people. Without enough of either, even the best strategy falters. Sri Lankan's challenge is to rebuild both while keeping costs in check. So, the resolution? Creative solutions like cross-training staff, renegotiating leases, and prioritizing key routes are essential for staying aloft in a turbulent industry. What's next for SriLankan Airlines? 2 words: restructuring and privatization. These are more than buzzwords, they're survival strategies. The government's goal is to cut debt, attract investment, and ultimately transfer management to private hands. The technical term for this? Public-private partnership, where the state and investors share control and risk. Now, you may be wondering, why privatize it all? Here's the setup. Private investors bring discipline, access to capital, and management expertise. But the conflict? There's public concern about job security and national identity. Selling the family silver isn't easy. But there's a resolution in sight. Sri Lanka is strategically positioned to become a regional hub, especially as India's aviation market explodes. With smart partnerships and new routes, Sri Lankan can tap into booming demand for travel to and from South Asia. The government has already started talks with international investors, aiming for transparency and accountability, 2 things past deals lacked. If done right, this could turbocharge the airline's recovery and help the country's broader economy. So, the big takeaway? Restructuring isn't just about survival, it's about unlocking Sri Lankan Airlines' full potential as a regional player. Let's wrap up by looking to the future. Sri Lankan Airlines is betting big on sustainability, reducing its carbon footprint and going green. The technical term here is net zero emissions, the goal of balancing the carbon released with carbon removed from the atmosphere by 2050. Now, you might think, isn't aviation notorious for pollution? Absolutely. But airlines worldwide are under pressure to adopt sustainable fuels and eco-friendly practices. Sri Lankan is investing in lighter, recyclable materials and supporting local conservation projects to offset emissions. Imagine a future where every flight not only connects people, but also protects the environment. That's the vision the airline is pitching to investors and the public alike. Of course, transformation won't be easy. Staying on course requires steady reforms, smart investment, and bold leadership. But if Sri Lankan Airlines can pull it off, it could reclaim its place as a proud flag bearer for the island and a model for recovery in the region. So, next time you see a Sri Lankan jet taking off, remember, it's more than just a plane. It's a symbol of resilience, ambition, and the journey from crisis to recovery.